I think it's best for Seattle to just kind of like tank this year and probably start this rebuilding process, and potentially, if they're gonna do that, they're definitely gonna miss the playoffs. But it's just the good thing for the long term. If this management team still thinks that they are going to compete in the second half and just continue to think that they're gonna actually go on a good run, then yeah, that is not a very good strategy to do. And I'm just saying, Seattle fans, it's best for your team to rebuild if you want to have long term success, because it's pretty clear that this core that they have right now is done. It's finished. This championship kind of core that they've been having, and that this core that has been just so good for the last couple of years, it's done. Okay? But moving on into the next one, Sporting KC versus TFC, and this is a game that is certainly very, very important for both team in different reasons. For Sporting KC, they got to stop the bleeding of their last two games. I mean, they lost back-to-back games for the first time this season, and those two games that they have lost were not good loss. I mean, they get embarrassed by Montreal on the road, and then heading into RSL, and yes, I know they had that midweek game and they have to travel all the way across the other side of the country to play that game, but it was definitely not a good performance against RSL. And now coming into this game, Sporting KC is going to miss a couple of important pieces. They're going to missing Daniel Shalhoub for this game because he got a straight red in the last match, and they're going to miss Roger Espinoza for this game because he also got a red card in the last game. And they're going to have to find somebody else that can potentially score the goal for them. And certainly, I just wonder for Sporting KC, what happened to Johnny Russell? I mean, this is a player that was absolutely on fire in the beginning of the season, and now all of a sudden, I haven't heard anything about Johnny Russell continue to dominate for this team. And you wonder, is that early was that kind of the part of the season where Russell just kind of found a very good form, and that was that, and eventually when he got out of that informed kind of way, he is not producing anymore. So I just wonder what happened to him. I think he might be injured because I don't think he featured in the last game against RSL. But yeah, we talk about Johnny Russell, of him being an absolute goal scorer for this Sporting KC team, but now all of a sudden he is nowhere to be seen. And same thing goes to Felipe Gutierrez, although I heard Gutierrez got a sports knit surgery a couple of weeks ago, and I think he is going to be out for an expanded part of the time. So Sporting KC are also dealing with injuries right now, and they're playing against a TFC team that also is dealing with injury. And this TFC team, not only they're winless in 4 games, but they are running out of time to eventually get this thing going and potentially try to have a comeback here in the second half of the season to get into the playoffs. Because right now, the way TFC has been playing looks nothing like the TFC we've seen in the last couple of seasons. And in many ways, this TFC team this season look very similar to what it has always been, what TFC is. People forget that despite the fact that Toronto has been very dominant for the last couple of season, it used to be TFC are kind of like one of those mediocre kind of team in the Eastern Conference and kind of like near the bottom of the table, and that's what this team is right now. Although it doesn't help the fact that they are playing a very tough stretch of their schedule, and that they have some key injury and key guys that are missing, guys like Josie Altidore and Drew Moore on that defense. That is a huge loss for them. And for TFC, they got to fix their defense. I mean, this defense for TFC is an absolute joke, and they are now it's getting to a point where this defense is so bad that you could even compare my Quakes defense as how these two defense look like the same thing. And if your defense is compared to my Quakes team, yeah, that means that you probably have a very, very bad defense. But moving on into the next match, Houston take on Minnesota. So Houston got a huge 2-2 draw against LAFC, and the reason why I say it's huge because that was a game that they should have lost. They were down 2-0 against LAFC with like 2 minutes left in the game, and yet somehow they come back from the dead and drew 2-2 against LAFC. But they are playing against a Minnesota team that is just, they are definitely feeling the hotness from the last game after they just completely obliterated Toronto 4-3 in that game. Although for Minnesota, even though it was a big win against TFC, and Quintero was just looked like a god in that game against TFC with the crazy hat trick that he scored. The question is, can they continue in this game against Houston? Houston is a very good team at home, although Houston does still have a lot of injury that they have to deal with. But having said that, like I said, the Dynamos has a good record at home. Minnesota does not do well whatsoever on the road, and I just wonder, is that kind of brilliant game against TFC kind of just like a one-off thing, as we have seen a couple of times with Minnesota, where at time it looked like this team could potentially make it to the playoffs and fight for that playoff position, and then all of a sudden they go on a 3-game losing streak. So it's going to be interesting to see how Minnesota will do in this game, and I don't expect them to win this game. If they can get a draw in this game, it will definitely help their cause in terms of a team that maybe, and I'm still kind of debating whether or not if Minnesota can potentially get there. Like, this is a team that, like I said, has shown signs they've been a team that are playing like a playoff team, but they also have shown sign that they are like the worst team in the league. So, at the end of the day, I think for Minnesota, when you have some games against teams like Houston, that is another team that is fighting for playoffs, those are the games that you probably needs to win. But at the same time, like I said, since they are on the road, I won't be, if you're a Loons fan, I wouldn't be upset if this is going to be a draw against Houston, because Houston is a very good team at home. But moving on into the next game, RSL taking on FC Dallas, and this is definitely a game that besides the New York Derby, I will be definitely keeping an eye on, because RSL coming into this game certainly red hot after they beat Sporting KC 4-2, and that they have not been beaten at home since the opening home weekend, where they got absolutely embarrassed by LAFC 5-1, and they're playing against a Dallas team that are definitely like full of confidence after they beat Atlanta 3-2, and a come from behind victory against Atlanta United. So this is going to be interesting. Something potentially could have to give in this game, whether it's RSL finally losing a home game, or Dallas potentially will start losing a couple, well, not a couple, but finally lose again, and just kind of like not really in this kind of hot streak that Dallas has been on for a while now. Well, although, to be fair, Dallas is not really on a winning streak, because a couple of weeks ago they lost to the Red Bulls, and I think that kind of ended a winning streak that they had, which was like 5 or 6 games. But Dallas is one of those teams that is just red hot, and right now they are currently top of the Western Conference. They surpassed Sporting KC last weekend. So, yeah, this will be very interesting, and this is a game that certainly, if RSL can beat FC Dallas, then I have no doubt that RSL is going to be a playoff team. I think despite how bad RSL has been on the road, this team looked like the best team in the league, or the best team in the Western Conference whenever they play at home. And I just don't know why. Like, I don't know why RSL tends to do so well at home, but they tends to do so poorly on the road. It's kind of remind me of what happened with the Quakes last season and a couple of seasons now, where they always tend to do well at home, but when they go on the road, they just completely shit the bed. But moving on to the next one, Vancouver taking on Chicago. Another team that potentially are fighting for the playoffs, and another team that could potentially end up in the playoffs is Chicago. And this team, for the first time this season, have finally found some consistency as they have gone unbeaten in 5 games, and they have a chance to go unbeaten in 6 games as they play against a Vancouver team that have lost back-to-back games after they went 6 games unbeaten. And this is a Vancouver team that looked absolutely deflated and lost after the last 2 games. I mean, the last game when they played against the Rapids, they lost that one, and that one was at home against the Rapids, a game that nobody ever lose against the Rapids whenever the Rapids are on the road. And then they got embarrassed by Philly on the road 4-0. So, Carl Robinson team is back into this kind of just kind of depressing stage where, Vancouver, there's been times this season where they have looked down and out, and it looked like this team is looked like this is going to be one of the worst team in the league, and looked like Carl Robinson was potentially going to get sacked. But it seemed that at times they have found a way to ride the ship and finally got on this kind of winning run that not a lot of people talk about it because of how they have gone through those kind of tough stretches. So, for the Whitecaps, if they want to get out of this tough stretches, they need to beat the Chicago Fire. And that is definitely not going to be easy because the Chicago Fire is red hot right now. And no pun intended, by the way. But moving on into the next one, the Galaxy take on the Columbus Crew. So the Galaxy are unbeaten in 4 games, but their last 2 games, they have blown a 2-goal lead. While Columbus have won against RSL 2-1 at home. But remember, the last time Columbus played against a LA team, they lost that 1-2-0, and it was against LAFC. And, for this game, for the Galaxy, they got to figure out that defense. Because it's pretty clear that this team, the only reason why I think the Galaxy are not in the playoffs right now and probably could miss the playoffs this season again is because of that defense. The attack is clearly a strong point for this Galaxy team with Zlatan and Alessandrini, and even at times Chris Pontius scoring great goals. But here's the big problem. As good as their attack is for the Galaxy, the defense is absolutely hot garbage. And it's been showing in these last 2 games when they play against 2 of the weakest teams in the league and 2 teams that are not necessarily very good going forward on the attack. And yet they still concede those goals and still blown those lead against those teams. So, and when they play against Columbus, obviously this game is what I call the Jersey Zardes Derby and the Jersey Zardes reunion, because Jersey Zardes is going to be playing against his former team for the first time in his career, and you know that there's nothing but sweeter for him to score goals against his former team and put a big middle finger on his former team that, I score against you, you let me go, and this is what you get. Actually, to be fair, I don't think Zardes is going to put a big middle finger at the Galaxy because, I heard Zardes is from the LA area and he loved the LA Galaxy when he was young. But still, he would definitely love nothing sweeter than to get some revenge and get a goal against his former employee that let him go. And it's pretty clear that this was a pretty big mistake for the Galaxy to let Zardes go. I mean, I know some Galaxy fans are not kind of regretting and not kind of admit that losing Zardes was pretty big, but it's pretty clear that Zardes, he's been making some big impact too with the Columbus Crew this season. And I think maybe some Galaxy fan will kind of rebuttal my argument about not missing him is because it's just that when Zardes go into a new team, he's finally found some new environment. And maybe this new environment for Jersey Zardes is the best thing for him because he's been struggling with the Galaxy. He needs a new change of scenery. And what do you know? A change of scenery has happened when he joined with the Crew, and now he is just banging goals for the Crew right now. But I really think for the Galaxy, you got to fix that defense. Like, if this team does not fix their defense, this team is not going to make the playoffs. I guarantee you that. But moving on to the last 3 games of this week. So, got the LAFC versus Orlando City game, a game that should have been playing first this week, but moved back to the nighttime because of the heat. And really, there's really not much, I would say, about this game other than the fact that I think LAFC is going to win, because LAFC, just like the weather in LA, is incredibly hot right now. And Orlando, you know, this is the first game for their new manager, James O'Connor, and, you know, yeah, it definitely is it's kind of harsh for James O'Connor to just throw into the fire, and that he have to play against an LAFC team that is just on a red hot streak right now and are one of the best team in the league. And I think that just like Atlanta, where they're kind of angry about their blown leads against Dallas in the midweek, I think LAFC will be the same thing. They're going to be very angry coming into this game because they blown a 2-0 lead and a game that they should have definitely won. I mean, 99 out of 100 times, if that game was replayed, that would be an LAFC win. But, you know, unfortunately, they blow the lead in that game, and I'm pretty sure they're going to put the sword to the Orlando City throat in this game. And I just don't know. You know, for Orlando City, maybe one thing I will give them hope is that maybe this change of scenery and that you got a new manager into this team might energize the team a little bit, because usually when we see a new manager come into the squad, usually the team definitely play a little bit more energy than when the old manager that just got sacked, because, you know, the old manager, a lot of the players are usually not playing for him anymore, and that it's a clear sign that he has lost the dressing room. And when the new manager comes, then all of a sudden the players are started playing again. So maybe that might be one thing that can save Orlando City and maybe pull a little bit of a surprise. But at the same time, I just think with LAFC, of how good they are this season, and just have not lost a single game in their new home this season, you know, I just don't think Orlando City will be that first team to finally get a win out of Bank of California Stadium. And then moving on into the last 2 games that I'm going to be talking about. So, the Timbers against the Quakes, and this is another game that I'm not going to talk a lot about because I did the preview about this game. And all I have to say is that I hope somehow, in some way, we can get a draw in this game, because I just don't see how we're gonna. It would be an absolute miracle if we can actually beat the Portland Timbers in this game, considering the fact that we have never won against the Portland Timbers away, and the fact that Portland currently has a 10-game unbeaten streak, which is the longest right now in MLS, and I have a feeling that unbeaten streak could be at 11 at the end of the game. And unless if the Quakes can do the same thing they did to RSL a couple of weeks ago, I think this is going to be another automatic L coming up for us every time when we play against Portland away. And yeah, that is pretty much it, as I already talked about the New York Derby earlier. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these games that's going to happen this weekend? Let me know your prediction down below in the comments below. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.